Welcome to Ghoul Talk.
Hey everyone, my name is Chris A, and welcome to the second installment of Ghoul Talk, where we will be talking about gender. So real quick refresher on what Ghoul Talk is. This is a quick, hopefully accessible way to dissect some politically loaded phrases, symbols, talking points. This video is not heavily researched. It's not meant to be academically rigorous. This is just meant to be conversational. Some talking points that you can share with people who are maybe not politically engaged. And today we're going to be talking about gender. Look at all these things. I got so many things. This might be a two-parter. Probably the easiest starting place is sex or biological sex. So this, basically, it just describes your function within the reproductive cycle, whether you are male or female. Even the two sexes within humans is not entirely binary. There are intersex people. There are people with different chromosomes and genitals and combinations of that. So you can be mostly male and have some female attributes. You can be mostly female and have some male attributes. But most people are one or the other. Sex is a lot more complicated than you might think. But for the most part, it's determined by things like your genitals, your chromosomes. The way we talk about sex is generally AMAB or AFAB, AMAB, AFAB. So what that means is assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth. So if you were born with a penis, chances are you are assigned male at birth. If you were born with a vagina, chances are you are assigned female at birth. But as we know, the genitals you're born with don't necessarily correlate to your gender identity or your gender expression. Some people like to say biological male and biological female. Most of those people tend to be transphobes, so draw your own conclusions. I think it's very weird outside of a medical setting to call a transgender woman a biological male. When you say words like assigned male at birth, that makes it clear that this is a medical term. It sounds very clinical. Whereas if you say biological male, it still sounds clinical, but there's still kind of some implied meaning that you're not really a woman if you're a biological male, which of course is not true. Because transgender just means that your gender does not match with the sex you were assigned at birth. This can be within the gender binary, meaning man or woman, or it can be outside of the gender binary. The most basic example would be a transgender woman is someone who was assigned male at birth, meaning they were born with a certain set of chromosomes and a certain set of genitals, but socially and internally they are not a man. So they may or may not transition. So generally speaking, there are two aspects to transitioning. The first is social transitioning. So that includes things like changing how you do your makeup, your hair, your nails, using different pronouns, changing your name, things that are the way people interact with you. Generally speaking, social transition is kind of the first step, especially with children. You know, a lot of children who are transgender, before puberty, there's no medical transition. So this is also a myth that a lot of people talk about. They'll say, well, do you support your 6-year-old choosing their gender? First off, did you choose your gender? Probably not. Transgender people don't choose their gender either. They are born a certain way. You can choose to transition, but you don't choose to be transgender. So the other type of transitioning is medical transition. So that involves things like hormones or surgery. Obviously, those are harder to reverse. So a lot of trans people will start with a social transition to kind of feel it out. And socially transitioning is a lot less expensive than doing hormones and surgery. If you hear the term cisgender or just cis, that just means that your gender corresponds to the sex you were assigned at birth. So if you are assigned male at birth and you are a man, you are cisgender. If you were assigned female at birth and you were a woman, you are cisgender. Everyone else is transgender, generally speaking. So transgender can include non-binary. I think it probably depends on who you ask. I like to say transgender and non-binary just to be inclusive. But when I say it, I am kind of being redundant. So non-binary just describes a person who fits outside of man or woman. This can be someone who is neither a man or a woman. This can be someone who is both a man and a woman at different times, at the same time. It can be half and half. It basically just means I'm not just a man, I'm not just a woman. They can be neither. So non-binary is, I like to use the term non-binary. Some people might say gender non-conforming. There's some overlap, there's some distinctions. I like to use non-binary because it feels like a very all-encompassing term of anyone who is not man or woman. You can be transgender and still fit within the binary. You can be transgender and be non-binary. So when it comes to gender, there are two important aspects, and these are gender identity and gender expression. And it's really pretty straightforward. Gender identity is how you think of yourself. Gender expression is how you present yourself to the world. A lot of people in the early stages of transitioning, they have figured out what their gender identity is, but maybe they haven't changed their gender expression. And that gender expression is part of really both social and medical transitions. A lot of times you'll hear the expression such and such self-identifies as. I personally don't like that language. A lot of people don't because there's some implication that you're the only one identifying yourself as that. I just say is. That for me is a lot easier, saying, rather than saying like Laverne Cox self-identifies as a woman, you would just say Laverne Cox is a woman. When we're talking about cisgender people, we don't ever say self-identify. Joe Biden is a man. Sure, he self-identifies as a man, but he is a man, and that's really the most important part. So when we're talking about transgender or non-binary people, we don't want to say self-identify because that kind of softens the language. Similarly, we don't want to imply that someone is choosing their gender. Generally speaking, people don't choose your gender. If you are cisgender and you're watching this, chances are you never made the active decision, okay, I am a man, I am a woman. And really, it's not about deciding what your gender is, but deciding how can my gender expression match my gender identity? How can I present myself to the world and to myself in a way that matches up with who I am? Preferred pronouns. So that's another thing that kind of gets under my skin. We don't use this language with cisgender people, so we shouldn't use it with transgender and non-binary people. You don't prefer your pronouns, you use pronouns. They are your pronouns. They're not your preferred pronouns. Again, it's just little things that kind of soften the language. It implies that someone's gender identity is on them, that they are making a choice, they have preferences, which sure, you do prefer to be called by your proper pronouns, but saying that they're preferred pronouns is kind of redundant. So let's talk about pronouns in general. Most people probably know the classic binary pronouns he, him, and she, her. And then the most common non-binary pronoun would be they, them. I use they, them pronouns just because he, him never really felt good to me. Some people have this misconception that they cannot be a personal pronoun because it's a plural. This is just factually wrong. I'm sure you use they as a singular all the time as a gender-neutral singular pronoun. Does anyone want to watch their favorite movie tonight, right? That's easier than saying, does anyone want to watch his or her favorite movie tonight? So it's nothing new to use they as a gender-neutral singular pronoun. What is new, or at least newer, is assigning that to a person who is non-binary. But it follows the way we've used that word for literally centuries. I mentioned that they, them pronouns are the most common non-binary pronouns. There are also what are called neopronouns, I believe, which are Newer pronouns, you can think of them as made-up pronouns, although all words are made up. I'm really not qualified to talk about any of that because I'm too old. That's a fairly newer practice. It's going to keep changing. People are going to adapt. Some of it's not going to work out. Some of it is going to work out. But if you see anyone whose pronouns are Z or Fae, that's just what that is. It's just a newer word. Generally speaking, I don't want to speak for everyone, but if you do misgender someone, and that means you use the wrong pronouns, or you call them a man when they're a woman, or vice versa, or call them one or the other when they're non-binary, just apologize, correct yourself, and move on. There's kind of this misconception of trans people are so touchy about their pronouns, and maybe some are. I don't know, but when I was a kid, I had long hair like this, and I would constantly get misgendered as a girl. Never once did I flip out on a person. I just said, oh, by the way, I'm not a girl. And the person just says, oh, I'm sorry, my mistake, and they move on. Most transgender and non-binary people are understanding in that way. There are mean people of all stripes, so I'm sure there are people who will get real up in your face about it. Granted, this is all assuming that you're being honest and you're trying your hardest. If you consistently misgender someone intentionally, that's different than slipping up and using he instead of she or he instead of them. So that's probably the biggest thing I want you to take away from this is how to interact with everyone, really. Again, I'm just going to keep using Joe Biden as an example. If you accidentally called Joe Biden she, what you would probably do is, oh, I'm sorry, I meant to say he, and move on. It would be impolite to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I never do this, I swear. Don't make it about yourself. And also, that just kind of makes it a bigger deal. Just say you misspoke. People misspeak all the time. It's not a big deal. Again, you want to do your best. If you're not making an effort to respect someone's pronouns or gender, that's a different issue. But if you mess up, people mess up all the time. Just apologize and move on. So because this video ended up being a two-parter, I forgot to do an outro for this part, which is why I'm wearing a different shirt. We've gone over a lot of topics in this video, but if I had to sum it all up, what I would say is that this distinction between gender and sex is nothing new. Even within more traditional ways of thinking about gender, being a man or being a woman has always been so much more than just what genitals you're born with or what chromosomes are in your DNA. What's new is that we are expanding the language in a way that allows for a more inclusive and nuanced and honest conversation about what gender really is. And I think that's pretty beautiful. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, give me a comment, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, subscribe to me on Patreon, share the video around on Reddit or Discord or whatever, and thanks for watching.
Yeah.